Thank you, Chair. Right. Order. Lloyd Hatton to move the motion.
It is a pleasure to serve under your chairship, Ms Butler. Before beginning, I would also like to put on record my thanks to the Making Space for Water campaigners. Their tireless work championing our riverways is exactly why we are here today in Westminster Hall. It is a privilege to open today's debate and to see it so well attended as we make the case for practical solutions that will protect our riverways, restore river habitats and boost water quality in all of our rivers and streams. But before doing so, I feel it is essential that I outline the significant challenge facing both nature and rivers up and down the country. Unfortunately, most of our rivers are in crisis, plagued by pollution from both agriculture and sewage, and they are subsequently on the brink of ecological collapse. As it stands, only a third of rivers in the UK are currently in good health, making our rivers some of the most polluted in Europe. And if we take a closer look, then we can see that 85% of the UK's rivers and streams have been heavily modified, which is stripping away habitats and accelerating a big fall in biodiversity. And yet we all know that our rivers are crucial for both nature and communities. Riverways are a vital source of fresh water, and they support wildlife, boost biodiversity, and help to regulate the climate locally. Take my home county of Dorset, for example. Our county even, is fortunate to play home to some of the world's rarest habitats, chalk streams. The high mineral content and year-round moderate temperatures mean that local chalk streams like the Stour and Froome are home to a broad array of wildlife and habitats. And on the Isle of Purbeck, in my constituency, I am so proud that we hosted the first official wild beaver release in England, some 5 centuries after wild beavers were hunted to extinction. Now, happily.
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Member for South Dorset, and I commend him for securing this debate. On the point about beavers, we've had massive flooding in the West Country, in Dorset and certainly in Devon this week. I'm hearing from farmers in my patch who agreed to have beavers released into their rivers, onto their farmland, that there are complications to that. And so does he agree with me that this cannot be a one-off action, but rather needs sustained engagement from the government and indeed financial support, such as the Sustainable Farming Incentive?
I thank the Honourable Member for his intervention, and I agree that a coordinated approach that works with farmers, landowners and DEFRA is required. That extensive work did take place in my constituency, and it meant that the release was broadly seen as a success story. And I think it's certainly something we'd like to replicate across the West Country and indeed across the country. To continue the saga of the beaver, if I may, the release in Purbeck has been a success story, and I'm so pleased that the beavers can call the expansive freshwater and dense woodland at Studland their new home. Of course, this is also a good news story for restoring nature and boosting water quality. Beavers are nature's engineers. By creating wetland habitats, they can help to retain water during floods and drought, but also release it during droughts. And finally, they also help to filter polluted water and improve its quality further downstream. They play a crucial role in aiding nature's recovery. However, the mighty beaver cannot and must not act alone. Like many members attending today's debate, I'm committed to helping restore nature across all our riverways, creating the conditions for wildlife and habitats to flourish in our rivers once again. Happily.
Shannon.
I commend the honourable member for South Dorset for bringing this forward. He's absolutely right to bring this to the House for consideration. The state of the waterways, of course, is a growing concern for us in Northern Ireland as well. It's agriculture runoff, it's outdated wastewater systems, it's storm overflows that are putting rivers such as the Lagan, the Bann and the Foyle under pressure, threatening biodiversity and public health. So we're going to improve the water quality, tackle agricultural pollution, invest in sustainable water systems, ensuring our rivers and freshwater species are protected for future generations. That can happen with the Minister and with government, but it can also happen across all of the regional administrations. And does he feel, or does the honourable member feel, it's important that when we address this issue, it's done collectively across the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland?
I thank the honourable member for his intervention. It is almost as if he has had a sneak exclusive peek at my remarks. If I may, I would like to now turn to the damaging role of water companies. Many of these firms sadly have a sorry track record when it comes to protecting rivers and boosting water quality. For far too long, many water companies have profiteered despite polluting our rivers and streams. And unfortunately, the previous government did frankly too little, too late to reverse this worrying trend. To name just one shocking example, Wessex Water, my local water company, killed some 2,000 fish in Melksham after a sewage pumping station failure. Now, Wessex Water were slapped with a fine for the damage on their watch, but by then it was too late as untreated sewage had leaked into nearby rivers. And I'm sure that today we will hear many more horror stories in this debate, with failing water companies found to be culpable for environmental destruction within our rivers and streams. The days of water companies polluting with impunity and then hiding behind weak regulation must end. So this is the mess that we are currently wading through. Looking ahead, I am pleased that the government is beginning to take all of the necessary steps to clean up and better protect our rivers and streams. From the Water Special Measures Act, which finally gave regulators the power to curb water bosses from collecting undeserved bonuses, to the £104 billion secured in investment to start to rebuild water infrastructure across the country. I feel the government is beginning to get to grips with this scandal. Now, in Wessex Water's case, government action did lead to a £500,000 fine for the Melksham sewage failure, the second largest fine ever issued to a water company. And it also led to a subsequent ban on bosses at Wessex Water receiving their undeserved bonuses. The White Water paper released just last week does further strengthen the regulation of the big water firms, and I welcome that the government is committed to create a single, integrated, tough regulator, which will replace the current patchwork of regulatory bodies and will hopefully, I believe, deliver a more proactive, targeted and rigorous way to hold water companies to account. But we must be honest about the challenges still ahead. Despite new legislation, which I was proud to support, water companies continue to hide behind opaque and complex corporate structures, shielding themselves from scrutiny while our rivers and streams pay the price. Early this month, it emerged in the Guardian newspaper that the Chief Executive and the Chief Finance Officer of Wessex Water received some £50,000 in previously undisclosed extra pay from a parent company. And just a few weeks before that, we learnt that a former Chief Executive at Wessex Water had been handed a whopping £170,000 payment, again from a parent company. Both of these payments happened in exactly the same year that the firm was correctly banned by this government from paying undeserved bonuses. When you look at all the reports on just how Wessex Water are choosing to operate, it is safe to say that something extremely fishy is going on. If these bonuses can simply be rebadged as undisclosed payments from another arm of a large web of companies, then the bonus ban is at risk of becoming unenforceable. Of course, this all weakens public trust, undermines the authority of our regulators, and it allows those responsible for gross environmental damage to be rewarded for failure. I firmly believe that the government, working closely with a new single regulator, must now tighten the rules to prevent water companies from exploiting corporate structures to disguise what are clearly bonuses in disguise. Without this, I fear the bonus ban will not change the corporate culture and wrongdoing within these big firms, and water companies will continue to pollute our precious rivers and streams. Alongside strengthening regulation and ensuring that pollution certainly does not pay, further work must be done to restore wildlife and reduce flood risks along our rivers. Again, I should stress that the government are taking the necessary action. The recently published Environmental Improvement Plan includes an important target to double wildlife-friendly farms by 2030, and I know this is welcomed by a huge range of farmers in my constituency of South Dorset. And the commitment of £500 million for landscape recovery will hopefully play a vital role in revitalising nature while helping communities better withstand floods. Further, the Secretary of State's recent announcement on the Sustainable Farming Initiative will go some way to ensuring that farmers and landowners can play their part protecting rivers and wildlife. However, I do remain concerned, Ms Butler, that gaps do remain when we look at what role nature-based solutions can and must play in cleaning up our rivers. This is why I support the Making Space for Water campaign, run by the Riverscapes Partnership, which is a broad coalition of the Rivers Trust, the National Trust, the Woodland Trust and the Beaver Trust. Safe to say there's a lot of trust in this campaign. Farmers and landowners are currently standing on the front line of our environmental crisis, and the role that they play and will play in the future when it comes to protecting our riverways and enabling nature recovery is going to be absolutely critical. They are seeing firsthand the pressures facing our rivers and the threat of flooding all year round. As has previously been remarked upon, just this week, Storm Chandra has brought absolute havoc to my home of Dorset. The heavy rainfall has flooded rivers, left fields waterlogged, livestock areas almost completely unusable, and access to farmland is severely restricted. But farmers and landowners are not just experiencing these challenges, they are absolutely critical to solving them. The decisions they make about their land shape and the quality of our water and the health of our rivers and the survival of our wildlife is essential. I know that in my constituency, from Purbeck to Wool to Weymouth, many farmers and landowners are already stepping up, carving out space for nature alongside their nearby rivers and restoring the landscapes that we all depend upon. But they cannot carry this burden alone, and it is abundantly clear that they still lack some of the financial support needed to best protect our riverways. To this end, targeted and simplified financial incentives must be considered and given to farmers and landowners to restore and enhance our rivers and streams. This is the key and I believe most important ask of the Making Space for Water campaign. With the right support in place, this will allow farmers and landowners to create river buffers and wetlands alongside their land. It will allow them to plant riparian trees and floodplain meadows, and it will allow them to reintroduce beaver populations just like they have already done in Purbeck. If successful, all of this will help to create a network of connected, nature-rich river corridors. Clean, functioning river corridors are a good news story for everyone. They will help nature to recover. They will help water quality to improve. They will help to ensure that biodiversity is no longer in freefall. And they will ensure that our countryside becomes much more resilient. Where already implemented, healthy river corridors slow down the flow of water, and reduce the risk of devastating floods and prolonged droughts. They act as natural infrastructure, storing water when we have too much and releasing it when we have too little. But the benefits go beyond just flood protection. Restored river corridors trap pollution before it reaches our waterways, and they support farmers, strengthening the resilience of their farmland without undermining food production. If we are truly serious about restoring nature, protecting rivers, boosting water quality, then Making Space for Water must be at the heart of the government's approach. Now, I know that the Minister is an enthusiastic advocate for our rivers and streams, and the Minister has met with the team behind the Making Space for Water campaign. Indeed, she spoke proudly at the campaign launch just last year. So I hope today she will take the opportunity to set out what further action her department can take to protect our riverways. And I would welcome any further detail that the Minister can give us on exactly how this government, alongside a new tough single regulator, will block failing water company bosses from receiving bonuses through the back door. From conversations, I know the Minister shares my view that a tough bonus ban is critical to challenging the corporate misbehaviour that is all too present across the water sector. To conclude, by embracing this important campaign, we can boost water quality, we can aid nature and biodiversity recovery, and we can enhance our rivers and streams across the country. Indeed, we can make space for water once again. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered the matter of protecting and restoring river habitats. Ellie Chow.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and I'd like to thank the member for South Dorset for securing this debate and all colleagues who are here today. Protecting and restoring river habitats is a subject very close to my heart and indeed to the hearts of my constituents in North Herefordshire, as the Minister is well aware, and I'm delighted to have an opportunity to speak about this further today, and I thank the organisations behind the Making Space for Water campaign too. Our rivers must not be seen as drains. They're the veins and the arteries of what is the lifeblood of our land and everything that lives on it. They're integral to our collective health, to our communities, our environment and our economies. Essential channels for the circulation of that lifeblood of fresh water. And we ignore them, we pollute them at our peril. If we make space for water, we have multiple benefits. It helps us to be resilient to flooding, protects us from the risk of drought. It helps farmers to deliver food security, crucial for us today, and of course helps to boost nature and biodiversity resilience. To speak briefly, first of all, about flooding, this is something that affects my constituency of North Herefordshire horrendously frequently, and it is only going to get worse. I have spoken in this House numerous times already about the fact that climate change is increasing the severity and frequency of flooding incidents. If we make space for water, if we give room to our rivers, we will, of course, enable ourselves as communities to be more resilient. We saw the devastating effect of the floods in November last year in Monmouth, in Skenfrith, just over the border from my constituency. We know that if we invest in making space for water and looking after our rivers, that will have numerous protective benefits for us all as an economy. I've seen it in practice myself in an Environmental Audit Committee visit to the Netherlands last year, where they are really innovative on this. They have a huge project called Room for the River, where they've taken this hugely seriously. They've started by identifying the problem, what the solutions could be, and then making sure that there's public support and government commitment behind that. And I strongly urge the government to take a similarly strategic approach to managing water, to managing flood resilience in our communities, because this problem is only going to become more and more challenging, and it has devastating effects on people's lives. Turning now to the question of river pollution, one of the first things I did when I was elected to this House was to set up the all-party parliamentary group on water pollution. It's such a significant issue across the country, and especially in my constituency of North Herefordshire. The Honourable Member for South Dorset has already made reference to the outrageous pollution caused by sewage companies, the profiteering that has happened for decades at the expense of the natural environment, and indeed the pockets of consumers and citizens and bill players. It is clear to me and to the Green Party that water should be in public hands. This is a natural monopoly. It's a service that should be provided only for the public good. It's absolutely right that the government is taking action to tackle the problems caused by the water and sewage companies. And yet, as I have emphasised previously, if we only look at the water and sewage companies, we are not looking at half of the problem. In fact, more than half of the problem, because we know from the government's own data that agricultural water pollution is an even bigger contributor to water pollution than is sewage. And yet, in last week's white paper, it merits only one page of the 48-page document. This is deeply disappointing, and it signals that although the government talks about cleaning up our rivers, lakes and seas, it is not taking a holistic, joined-up approach to this problem. We cannot deal with these issues in isolation. Agricultural water pollution is even more of a problem in my constituency. More than 70% of the phosphate pollution that's had a devastating effect locally comes from agricultural runoff. This has impacts on nature, such as the suffocation of important species like ranunculus. It has impacts on people who no longer feel able to swim in the rivers that they've swum in their entire lives, and it has huge impacts on the economy. We've had a planning moratorium in North Herefordshire, in the Lug catchment, since October 2019, which has cost the economy at least £500 million. And huge amounts of effort have gone into trying to resolve this locally. I pay tribute to the work of the council and of citizen scientists locally who have done everything that they can to address this. But without proper government support, local actors are stuck. People care passionately about this. The citizen scientists in the Y catchment have done about 50,000 water sample tests since the year 2020, just in the last 5 years. That's an amazing piece of work. There are farmers who are stepping up, doing fantastic work themselves, out of their own pockets, their own motivation, and coming together under the auspices of projects like the Y-Scapes project that brings together 49 farmers throughout the Y and Lug catchments to work together, making a proposal for a landscape recovery scheme. But they need government support. At the minute, we have a white paper with just one page on agriculture. We have a diffuse water pollution plan published at the end of last year on the Y catchment that says even with perfect implementation of all available measures, we will get nowhere close to solving the pollution problem that is still totally gumming up our environment, communities and economy in North Herefordshire. So I ask the Minister, what more will she do? Because it is clear that we urgently need more. We need more support for farmers. We need funding for projects like Y-Scapes. We need a commitment for the proportion of the amount of funding that's been committed to landscape recovery under the the revised EIP. How much of that will go to river corridors? How much of it will go to projects like Y-Scapes? We need more funding and teeth for the Environment Agency to make sure that it's a level playing field for all people in the area. And fundamentally, we need a water protection zone for the River Wye. We need government to ensure that that option is fully, properly assessed. Our rivers are the veins and arteries of our communities, our economies, our environment. They are not drains. They are essential to the health of our environment. We need that government support for the citizens, the farmers and everybody else who is working to protect and restore our river habitats. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tom Hayes.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. And can I start just by thanking my honourable friend for South Dorset, my Dorset neighbour, for securing this really important debate. I know this is an issue that matters an awful lot to him, and he represents it perfectly on behalf of his constituents. Can I also just note that I think this is the debut of the Liberal Democrat spokesperson in responding to a debate. The honourable member for Tiverton and Minehead, my good friend, so I'm pleased to see her in her place. I look forward to seeing what she has to say. This is a timely debate because we have seen in the last day a severe flood warning issued for the Lower Stour at Iford Bridge Home Park and across BCP due to Storm Chandra, with rapidly rising River Stour levels. I want to start just by putting on record my thanks to my constituents who have put up with Storm Chandra. The disruption that's been involved, many of them having to be evacuated, and they've done that stoically. Their life has been made harder, though, because the electrical supply was unsafe at Iford Bridge Home Park, forcing evacuations. This was avoidable. The power supply was left unprotected by the owners, Hampshire Mobile Park Homes Enterprise Limited. And although they were fined over £27,000 last summer for failing to carry out 33 required actions that would, among other things, have improved electrical safety, they failed to do so. I'll be seeking a response from the owner and pressing for answers, because my constituents deserve to feel safe in their own home always. And equally, there needs to be greater maintenance of our rivers, with dredging and the getting rid of everything that raises the riverbed, so that when flooding happens, frankly, what is washing through streets isn't detritus and sewage and making people's recovery from flooding so much harder. I also want to thank BCP's council teams and the Environment Agency for responding and standing alongside my constituents in this difficult time. Water quality is something that is uppermost in the minds of my constituents. It's something that comes up often in my surgery appointments, on the doorsteps that I visit weekly and in my community visits. It's also something which is particularly on the mind of my school students. So this calendar year, in January, I've been to Avonbourne to speak with students there who are engaged on a youth enterprise scheme. Avonbourne is a fantastic school doing amazing things. I've been to St Walburga's, Malmesbury Park, Epiphany Park School and St James's Academy. And pretty much every question that I was asked in those classrooms was about the quality of water. Younger people care passionately about our planet, about its protection, about their right to swim without being washed over by sewage. And they want this government to get this right. At St James's Academy, I went into 2 different classrooms and I spoke with the eco-counsellors, and they talked at great length and with great eloquence and expertise about what we should be doing. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that in this debate. I also want to put on record my thanks to Christchurch Harbour and Marine Society, who have been working with citizen scientists to make sure that Christchurch Harbour's water quality can be improved. In so doing, they're setting an example to the young people in the schools I was describing. They're calling for a dedicated conservation policy for the harbour. And I know that's important. I know from testing water quality in that harbour that much could be done to improve the situation. And I know too that my school students that I talk about are concerned about the situation in the River Stour. And it's not surprising, really, as my honourable friend for South Dorset was saying, because our rivers have been heavily modified and they aren't fit for purpose. An estimated 85% of the UK's rivers and streams have been altered from their natural state. Landscapes can't cope with the pace and the extent of climate impacts like flooding from storms and heavy rainfall. Indeed, 20% of UK homes and 80% of UK farmers have already felt the negative impacts of these changes in our environment. On the same front, the UK faces a growing water scarcity crisis. England alone will need an additional 5 billion litres of water a day by 2050 to support a growing population that already uses 14 billion litres, and that's equivalent to 35% of our current consumption. We know, as we were just hearing from my honourable friend, that we have some of the unhealthiest rivers in Europe, thanks to the inheritance given to us by the Conservatives. Only a third of the UK's river stretches are in good ecological health, with many in a dire state as a consequence of physical modifications, intermittent agriculture and road runoff, and continuous discharges from sewage treatment. And lastly, biodiversity across the UK is declining. On average, UK species have fallen by 19% since 1970, and just 3% of England's land is effectively protected and managed for nature. Pollinators, native mammals and freshwater species once thriving in our rivers, like Atlantic salmon and brown trout, are on the brink of collapse. Is it any wonder that the younger generation are outraged and they want us to act? And we are acting. This government got to work quickly. It was a pleasure to sit on the Water Special Measures Bill Committee with my honourable friend, where we heard much flim-flam from the opposition. But in spite of that, we managed to crack on with introducing significant measures, be it the banning of executive bonuses, beg your pardon, the Minister has made me laugh now, be it the banning of executive bonuses if firms fail. I would very happily at this point give way.
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for giving way at the risk of delivering more flim-flam. He referred to the Water Special Measures Bill as being the measure that sort of announced the ban on company bonuses. Would he concede that actually that was introduced by regulation by the last Conservative government? And in fact, what his government has done is to put a regulation into a statute. It didn't actually change the law at all.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. I think that's a perfect example of leading with your chin. There's a little bit of brass neck involved in that. I think when we speak with our constituents and we speak with the water sector, they're abundantly clear about the difference that this Labour government has made and that these changes have particularly made. And we were just hearing from my honourable friend there about the poor performance of Wessex Water's chief executives, where we heard that earlier this year the chief executive and the chief financial officer of Wessex Water took £50,000 in undisclosed extra payment from the parent company and then a former Wessex Water Chief Executive was handed a huge £170,000 payment, again from the parent company. I struggle to remember under the Conservatives when there was significant fining of water companies. Indeed, when I speak with the water sector, they feel like it was the Wild West, and they're welcoming the fact that we finally have a government which is getting this situation under control. I do welcome the work of the Minister in the Water Special Measures Act, which banned executive bonuses in the case of failing firms. It presented jail if they fail, automatic penalties for a range of offences, and mandatory real-time monitoring. I welcome too the work of the government since then, which is to commit to anti-sewage pollution being reduced by 50% by 2030, a reduction in storm overflow spills by half by 2030, 10,000 water quality inspections per year, and the Environment Agency securing a record £22.1 billion investment over the next 5 years. I'm particularly pleased to see in my own constituency in the wider area investment by Wessex Water now of around £230 million. And I've been to both sewage treatment plants in order to see how the work is going. And so I am pleased to see that we are making progress, which also includes the replacement of Ofwat, which has been failing for a long time with an independent regulator, but there is more to do. We need to protect communities from the dangers of flooding and drought with the creation of multi-benefit mosaic habitats, and in so doing we can unlock their full potential for nature recovery, carbon storage and flood mitigation. We need to help farmers continue delivering our food security with the prioritisation of the deployment of buffers in marginal agricultural land so that farmers benefit financially and they can mitigate against the impacts on food production. We need to boost biodiversity and nature recovery by enhancing river corridors and making space for rivers to return to their natural function, and in so doing we can boost biodiversity and nature recovery through the creation of new and more connected natural habitats. And we need to clean up our rivers. With healthy, functioning river corridors, we can achieve what Martin Lyons, Chief Executive Officer of Nature Friendly Farming Network, says is a practical way to improve water quality, reduce flood risk and restore biodiversity. He says that farmers are part of the solution, and he's right, and with the right backing, these nature-rich corridors can help future-proof both our land and our livelihoods. And Richard Benwell, the Chief Executive of Wildlife and Countryside Link, says that carving out space to renaturalise rivers would bring ecosystems to life, reduce flood risk and bring joy to millions. In closing, I want to echo my honourable friend for South Dorset in welcoming the first ever licensed beaver wild release in England in our beautiful county of Dorset. It's good news for Dorset, it's good news for our country, and I feel sure that there is more good news to come.
Harry Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Nothing shapes a landscape more than a river. Nothing brings a landscape to life more than a river. If you ask ChatGPT what is a river, it will tell you it's a natural stream of flowing water that moves downhill across land. And that, Ms. Butler, tells you precisely why members of Parliament should never use ChatGPT. A river is life, abundant life. Rivers are not just streams of water, they're amazing ecosystems. Globally, rivers are home to over 140,000 specialist freshwater species. We think of water as being everywhere, but 99% of the water on this blue planet of ours is unusable by humans. Of the remaining 1%, which comprise fresh water, almost 7/10 of that is locked up in ice caps and glaciers, leaving just 0.3% of the water on our planet in lakes, marshes, and rivers. Strange that something so vital to all life on our planet should be so scarce, so vulnerable. So I commend my honourable friend from South Dorset on securing this debate to focus the House's attention on how we can better protect and restore our precious riverine habitats. Others have set out the dire statistics, and it's sadly true that 87% of rivers outside our national parks don't meet the minimum ecological standards set out in law. Even inside the supposed protection of our national parks, only 4 out of every 10 riverine systems actually meet those legal minimum standards. So 2026 is a particularly significant year for the health of our rivers, with a new water bill and the release of the land use framework, as well as updates to the environmental land management schemes, ELMS. And I welcome the publication of the Water White Paper last week and the fact that it has committed to implement many of the recommendations of the Cunliffe Review. Chief among those is the commitment to shift the focus of water companies towards pre-pipe solutions for water pollution. Now, the government says, and I quote, it will ensure legislation, funding streams, and regulatory mechanisms to tackle the root causes of pollution. But these must be properly funded and backed up by a regime of thorough monitoring and swift penalty enforcement for infringements. You know, we politicians have made much of the failures of the water companies over the past few years, and the totally disgraceful exploitation of bill payers to line shareholders' pockets whilst failing to address pipe leakage, combined sewers and sewage outflows. And I entirely support the outrage expressed by my honourable friends on Wessex Water and their motley leadership crew. But they are not solely responsible. And the agriculture sector, whether it be chicken farms on the River Wye or eutrophication from nitrogen fertiliser runoff, the government must drive the solutions to river habitat restoration. ELMS, the Environment Land Management Scheme, is the key part of that. When it was first launched by the previous government to replace the EU's agricultural subsidies, the £2.4 billion of ELMS was to be split into 3 equal funding pots of £800 million a year. Landscape recovery was one of those pots. Last month's Environmental Improvement Plan, however, set out the new headline commitment of just £500 million for landscape recovery projects. Now, £500 million is a lot less than the £800 million initially promised. But wait, that £500 million is not £500 million a year like the £800 million. It is £500 million over 20 years. That is a paltry £25 million a year, making a total mockery of the idea that the government is taking landscape recovery seriously. So I asked the Minister, will she publish the evidence and modelling showing how the combined ELMS offer will add up to deliver the government's environmental objectives and legal commitments on water? What evidence can the Minister direct me towards which demonstrates that £500 million for landscape recovery is sufficient to deliver the government's environmental objectives and legal commitments, both in terms of our 30 by 30 commitments as well as longer-term EIP and Environmental Act targets? Will the forthcoming water reform bill go further than the Water White Paper and put nature-based solutions at its core for tackling water pollution, including actions to prioritise and fund catchment-based measures at scale? Will the government consider embedding an overarching commitment to create a national river corridor network within the Environment Act delivery plans, which prioritises the restoration of river habitats along the lines proposed by the Making Space for Water campaign? And finally, can the Minister tell us when the government will deliver on its commitment to update the 1949 National Park and Access to the Countryside Act in order that protected landscapes are given stronger powers and clear duties to drive nature recovery, including river habitat restoration? The water bill must embed the utilisation of nature-based solutions in a way in which it's not been used for so far. The Water White Paper's comments on exploring the use of green bonds to help investment in nature-based solutions is therefore welcome. But we cannot simply allow this to be something to leave to the private investment to get us to where we need to be. The government should empower the new super regulator's chief engineer to direct companies to prioritise and scale up nature-based solutions, mandating wherever possible a change from grey infrastructure to green. The ministerial directions to Ofwat and Natural England during the transition phase should pave the way for this. Excuse me.
I'm very grateful to him if he would. Grateful to my honourable friend for giving way, and he's making an eloquent speech about the importance of having that sort of cross-society working between government, between regulatory bodies, and indeed between those who actually are stewards of our riverways and of our countryside. Does he agree with me that actually, unless we have that collaborative approach, we're unlikely to see the change that we both so desperately want, so we can restore the health of our riverways and actually begin to allow for nature recovery to take root in our river environments across the country?
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend. I didn't know that his constituency was the manufacturer of Benylin, but it certainly worked on this occasion, so I thank him very much. Nature-based solutions are the cost-efficient, multi-benefit, long-term solution which recognise that enabling nature to thrive is the best way to restore our rivers, our wetlands, and our riparian habitats. And I particularly want to single out the work of the West Cumbria Rivers Trust and the West Lakeland Farmers Group. They've shown with their work on the rivers Irt and Bleng, the shade offered by restored riparian woodland brings river temperatures down to safe levels for threatened native species such as Atlantic salmon and brown trout. And this shows how the health of a river is not simply about what toxins are put into it, but about the whole natural ecosystem and how it is managed. Riparian woodlands also stabilize riverbanks, reduce erosion, control sediment and nutrient input from adjacent land. So it's looking at the whole of the ecosystem, not just at the river itself, that is so important. I commend the Making Space for Water campaign, which provides an evidence-driven framework for river restoration, and I urge the government, as I know it does, to support it fully. The Rivers Trust, National Trust, Woodland Trust, Beaver Trust, all are calling for support to create a network of connected, nature-rich river corridors, which include river buffers, river wiggling, beaver reintroduction, as has been mentioned, and wetland restoration. Ms. Butler, it's been my privilege to canoe down some of the most wonderful rivers in the world. Before I shuffle off this mortal coil, it's my great desire that I can canoe down all the great rivers of the world. I've done the Amazon, I've done the Mississippi, I've done the Congo, but there's so many more to do. And I just think rivers are an incredible joy in life. And we really have to understand them and promote them, restore them, and ensure that we give them health, because they give us life.
Thank you. Chris Hinchcliffe.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. It's a pleasure to serve with you in the chair, and I congratulate my honourable friend for South Dorset for his well-made speech opening this debate. Chair, the state of our rivers is a near-perfect metaphor for how badly we have got our priorities wrong as a society. Through a combination of carelessness, greed, and willful neglect, we have managed to poison and exhaust one of the essential elements of life. Not a single one of England's rivers, which quite literally shape our country, are in good overall health. All of them are polluted with toxic chemicals. Clean waterways teeming with life, places that can refresh body, mind and soul, should be the absolute right of every English citizen. But as it stands, we have squandered the vast natural wealth of our rivers and streams, and in doing so, robbed the future generations of our nation of the best part of their inheritance. Restoring our rivers and streams is above all a question of changing what we mean by growth. Experiencing the glories of nature is one of the joys that makes life worth living, and this is what we should be focusing our efforts on, not on abstract GDP figures that mean next to nothing to anyone outside the imagination of the OBL. Instead of more chemicals, more concrete, more consumption, we will do far more to improve the well-being of all of our citizens from every background by returning to them the burst of mayflies at the start of summer, the chance to turn as swimmers into cleanless leaping, as Rupert Brooke once did, without worrying what filth we might be swallowing, or even just the chance to mess about in boats in the streams that once flowed fully but now have been choked to a pitiful dribble, and a more potent symbol of national decline would be hard to invent. Chair, all the polling shows that the public are overwhelmingly in favour of decisive action to restore nature in this country, and the inspirational efforts of groups across North East Hertfordshire like Revival, the Friends of the Rib and Quin, and the Riverbean Restoration Association proves that grassroots passion for seeing our rivers, and especially our chalk streams, restored. And my party, Chair, the Labour Party, should know this deep in its heart. Since the first inception of our movement, the demand of politics by the people, for the people, has always been to protect the natural world and to open it up to all, so that ordinary working class citizens can enjoy it too. When politicians constantly attack the very nature that our voters love, and the Office for Environmental Protection has to investigate the government for the utter failure to deliver the statutory targets for rivers to be in good condition by next year, set out in laws that we politicians passed, it is little surprise that faith in politics is so miserably low. When we make promises to restore nature, we must never again fail to honour our words with action, and if that means the Treasury has to adapt its plans, so be it. And Chair, I want to be explicit on this point. I know that some people believe that putting more and more power in the hands of profiteering developers will somehow magically resolve stagnant productivity. But our model of speculative house building, combined with the legal obligation for water companies to supply water to new development, is increasingly incompatible with healthy rivers in many parts of the country. There are environmental limits on the amount of water we can use without wrecking our freshwater systems, but currently we are just pretending that they do not exist. The over-abstraction of the aquifers that feed our precious chalk streams is a clear case in point. In a country as wet as ours, it should take a true organising genius to produce water shortages, and yet a combination of planning deregulation and a profit-motivated private market has contrived to do just that. It is time for a chalk streams first approach that protects them from over-abstraction, and a long overdue recognition that genuine sustainable development means accepting that environmental boundaries cannot be compromised. But, Chair, the truth is, if we measure economic success by the genuine improvement of our constituents' lives and by the provision of good, meaningful work for all, then the restoration of our rivers is in fact a huge opportunity. So my plea to the Minister today is simple. Go back to your colleagues in the Treasury and tell them about the missing half of the clean jobs revolution. Tell them about the huge expansion in ecologists and conservation experts we need to monitor the health of our rivers and advise our local authorities and hard-working farmers. Tell them about the thousands of skilled jobs needed to re-wiggle our rivers and to create and maintain riparian buffers like Carr woodland and floodplain meadows around all our waterways. Tell them about the jobs and vast increases in natural capital that could be created across every part of the country by restoring the small waters like ponds and headwater streams and integrating these crucial areas at the top of river systems into the Water Framework Directive. And tell them about the national mobilisation needed to prevent the next river pollution scandal from the highway runoff filling our rivers with a nightmarish cocktail of microplastics, heavy metals and herbicides. There are thousands of unpermitted and in many cases barely monitored highway outfalls across the country which must be urgently investigated, maintained and upgraded if we are genuinely to improve the health of our rivers. Collectively, these are tasks that could not just upskill and employ thousands of people, they would immeasurably enrich our nation by restoring our streams and rivers as the crown jewels of England's countryside that they always ought to have been. Thank you.
Thank you. I hear congratulations are in order for the debut Lib Dem spokesperson, Rachel Gilmore.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, it's a pleasure to serve under you, and I thank my colleague from Bournemouth for his very kind words. Perhaps I should start my comments by saying I should declare a couple of interests. The job before I came to Parliament, I was head of strategy for the Environment Agency, specialising in water, flooding and the Water Framework Directive. And before that, I was the Director of Communications for the National Farmers Union, the first woman to sit on their board in 100 years. So despite my nerves about my first outing, I feel calmly confident that I've got a grip on things. So obviously I'd like to congratulate my colleague from the Public Accounts Committee on getting this debate today, and I was particularly interested in his comments about the beavers on the Isle of Purbeck, because in North Devon, in my colleague Ian Room's constituency, we've had similar issues there. And I was really touched to hear my colleague from North Herefordshire talk about the rivers of this country being like veins in a body, which was echoed by my colleague from West Brent. So they're very touching and actually really edifying and incisive observations in this debate. And it's clear that this is a matter that is close to all our hearts, whatever political party we come from, although obviously a couple of us more than one. So across the country, we are witnessing storms of increasing frequency and ferocity, and it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge the devastating flooding that has swept across my part of the world in the southwest in recent days. Events that were once expected perhaps once every 300 years, then once every 100 years, now seem to strike with alarming regularity. Our rivers, which are among Britain's most precious wildlife habitats, are bearing the brunt of this environmental decline. According to the Rivers Trust, and it isn't the first time that this has been mentioned today, not a single English river is in good chemical health, and only 15%, the opposite of my colleagues' 85%, are considered to be in good ecological condition. It's a sobering reality. Freshwater ecosystems are collapsing, and this country now has some of the unhealthiest rivers in Europe. The species that depend on these waterways, from fish to invertebrates to birds, are struggling to survive. Our rivers desperately need a reprieve. England, as has already been mentioned today, is home to 85% of the world's chalk streams, rare, crystal clear, ecologically distinctive waterways found almost nowhere else on Earth. On Earth. Part of the challenge lies in the withdrawal of the Environment Agency from stewardship of many of our rivers. For years, maintenance of watercourses has been inadequate. Now, with the EA stepping back for whatever reason, even in further parts of the country, including my own, the burden of looking after these waterways has become heavier still. We must recognise that farmers are on the front line of these environmental challenges, and that the relationship between land and water has changed significantly, dramatically over the past century, encapsulated in the European Water Framework Directive, which is not a complicated piece of legislation. This is why my party consistently emphasises the vital role of farmers as custodians of the natural world. They work tirelessly to reduce runoff and protect habitats, but they need support. Agricultural runoff, slurry, fertilisers and other such chemical cocktails continue to enter our waterways, and this has been exacerbated patently given the recent devastation caused by Storm Chandra, which has seen huge swathes of the West Country submerged, washing pollutants into rivers and compounding the ecological damage. It will come as a surprise to no one that such blame must be laid at the feet of water and sewage companies and their conduct. I had a meeting with South West Water on Monday, and it was obvious that their obscene greed and incompetence had inflicted immense harm on river habitats across the country, and indeed on my constituents in Bampton. Grotesque quantities of sewage have been allowed to spew into British waterways, discharges on an industrial scale with catastrophic consequences for aquatic life. It's an absolute insight. Heads, I fear, must roll. Liberal Democrats are disappointed, sadly, by the government's water white paper, as it falls short of the promise to bring about fundamental regulatory reform. We believe that the current model of private ownership has utterly failed. Frankly, only a complete overhaul will do. We would introduce a new system in which water companies are mutually owned by customers and run professionally in the public interest. We're also calling on the government to finally end the scandalous sewage cover-up by enforcing those crooked water companies to publish the volume of dumped sewage and not just the duration of spills. After all, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And I'm afraid the government's plans, and I'm really, really sad about this because, you know, I'm usually on side, just doesn't cut the mustard. The decision to abolish Ofwat is welcome, but it is only the first step. We will continue pressing the government to establish a new, robust regulator as a matter of urgency, one with real teeth and real accountability. Turning to other causes, water abstraction has risen sharply, reducing river flows and placing ecosystems under severe stress. Many rivers are now running perilously low, especially during dry periods. Moreover, centuries of physical modification, as already mentioned, straightening, damming, embanking, diverting, disconnecting, have fundamentally altered the natural character of our rivers. And these changes have inevitably disrupted fish migratory patterns, fragmented habitat connectivity, and in turn diminished resilience to climate change. A river that cannot move, meander, or naturally flood is a river that simply cannot thrive. Restoration efforts should focus on allowing our rivers to re-wiggle, love that word, to return to their natural meanders, reconnecting them with floodplains and rebuilding the diverse physical habitats that sustain life. In many cases, the best thing we can do is to step back, letting Mother Nature take its course, in essence, to rewild herself. This would include removing barriers such as weirs and small dams in order to aid fish passages, creating riffles, pools, wetlands and woody debris to enhance biodiversity, establishing nature-rich corridors along riverbanks, and an expansion of natural flood management systems. Such interventions are not just environmentally beneficial. There is also a major economic tail of this. Healthy waterways provide essential services to all our systems. They are our lifeblood.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Butler, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. Can I congratulate the member for South Dorset for securing this debate? It is a welcome opportunity to talk about the importance of our rivers and the vital need to protect and restore them. He is right when he says we need to improve the health of our rivers. And it's been a good debate today. I enjoyed the contribution from the Honourable Lady for North Herefordshire. She's correct when she described our rivers and streams as the veins and arteries of our environment. I noted she says she wants water companies to be taken into public ownership, but she didn't say how she would pay for it. So I'm left wondering, is it green policy to confiscate those assets from the shareholders, or is it to pay compensation? And if it's to pay compensation, how much and who pays for it? And it's, dare I say, an error that the Liberal Democrat spokesman fell into as well, which is to say that you're in favour of a radical policy, but not explain how you intend to pay for it. I enjoyed the contribution from the Honourable Member for Bournemouth East. I agree with him on the need for more dredging of our rivers, and in my view it is unacceptable that the Environment Agency has withdrawn from main river maintenance. The member for Brent West described rivers as amazing ecosystems, and I agree with him. And I also agree with him that when water companies break the law, they should be punished swiftly and severely. The member for North East Hertfordshire described the beauty of the countryside as one of the joys of life. And I am with him on that, even though he and I may not agree on many other things. Madam Chairman, can I congratulate my constituency neighbour, Somerset neighbour, the member for Tiverton and Minehead, on leading for her party in this debate. She said that farmers are custodians of the natural world, and I agree with her. And next time she speaks on water, I hope she'll give us the price tag for her party's policy of renationalising the water industry. The River Parrett flows through my constituency, and it's rather too high for comfort at the moment. Some of my constituents are watching the water level with concern, and I sincerely hope that their homes are not flooded over the next few days. The Parrett hosts an abundance of species, from heron to eels. You may even, if you're lucky, see an otter. And it's also important for the wider ecosystem, such as roe deer, that we're fortunate enough to enjoy in Somerset. I was fortunate to support a local campaign in my constituency to save the Paulet hams in the first few weeks that I was elected to Parliament. Paulet hams is a beautiful natural habitat bounded on 3 sides by the Parrett, which impacts this beautiful environment. I was pleased that that campaign was successful in defeating EDF's proposal to create an unwanted salt marsh. I raise this, Madam Chairman, because I understand the importance and the beauty of our rivers. And I know how passionately many of our constituents are about preserving and protecting them. The previous government started the process of improving the health of our rivers, but there is much more to be done. The last government's plan for water introduced the Water Restoration Fund, which channelled environmental fines and penalties into projects that improved the water environment. The Environment Act 2021 introduced legally binding targets to reduce the length of rivers polluted by harmful metals from abandoned mines, to reduce nitrogen, phosphorus and sediment pollution from agriculture into the water environment by at least 40%, and to reduce phosphorus loadings from treated wastewater by 80%. We also substantially increased the monitoring of water quality. When Labour left power in 2010, only 7% of storm overflows were being monitored. Today, that figure stands at 100%, and it is thanks to that progress that we now understand the scale of the problem. And in terms of their ecological health, only 15% of our rivers enjoy good status, and that is not good enough. There are various reasons for pollution, from sewage treatment works, wastewater, storm overflows, agricultural pollution, urban and transport runoff. Invasive species are also threatening native animals. Between 1960 and 2019, the number of non-native freshwater species has more than doubled, from 21 to 46. I'd be interested to know what work the government is doing to support the restoration of wetland or freshwater species which have experienced a decline. And I'd invite the Minister to comment on that in her response. Despite their promises to fix the water system, the government's recent Water White Paper was surprisingly slim. This is disappointing, given the detailed and thorough examination of the sector by Sir John Cunliffe's independent review. Now, the government has said its transition plan will be published this year. So can I ask the Minister, when she responds, will she guarantee that it will actually be published this year? And will she further guarantee it will be published when Parliament is sitting and not on the last day before a substantial recess, or in fact during a recess? And will the Minister also acknowledge that for all her government's talk about improving water quality, the Water Specials Measures Act, which they passed last year, consisted of regulations already announced by the previous Conservative government, which they repackaged as a statute? I will give way.
I thank the Honourable Member for giving way. In starting his speech, he's clearly a dedicated environmentalist and conservationist. In representing Bridgewater, I believe his constituency is covered by Wessex Water. And if that's the case, then, and he's affirming that it is, their former CEO, Colin Skelett, got £12.6 million across a decade in terms of pay and bonuses, with bonuses totalling £3.4 million. Over a decade of Conservative rule, executives of the 9 largest English and Welsh water and sewage companies got £112 million in pay and bonuses. So if the Conservatives provided regulations, why was it the case that they let water bosses line their pockets and allowed them to pump out filth?
Well, I thank him for his intervention. I don't think it is for government to regulate the salaries of the private sector. And it was the Conservative government that introduced the necessary regulations that enabled those water companies that were failing to be prevented from paying dividends, prevented from paying bonuses. Now, he might argue we came to it a bit late, and I might agree with him. But he should acknowledge that we were the ones that took the action, and it's those regulations that form the basis of the Water Special Measures Act. Now, I want to take this opportunity to ask the Minister about our canals. Members may have seen the recent incident of a collapse of the canal embankment in Shropshire. 2 narrow boats were left at the bottom of a trench in the canal bed, with a third hanging over the edge. Many other boats were left grounded. Now, while I understand that the cause of the breach is still being investigated, what assessment has the Minister made of the age and structure of the UK's canal network, and what impact that might have on the natural environment? Is she satisfied that current funding is adequate? Madam Chairman, if I might conclude, Britain's rivers and waterways are an integral part of our environment. It's important we improve their quality, and we will scrutinise the government to ensure it keeps the promises it made at the election. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairwomanship and see you here for the first time. And I'd like to thank my honourable friend for bringing forward this debate and for all of the passion and care and interest that he has shown consistently in this issue. And I share his excitement over the wild beaver release. I was quite jealous that my honourable friend, the Minister for Nature, got to be there at the beaver release, and I couldn't wangle an invite myself. But it was an incredible moment, a moment to see. So it was an exciting, truly exciting moment. And I agree with so much of what he was saying about how in protecting and restoring our river habitats being one of the most urgent environmental challenges we face. And I loved the imagery given by my honourable friend for Brent West about seeing them as like the lifeblood and seeing them as sort of living veins. I think that's a wonderful poetic way of explaining why they matter so much. And I completely agree. They're not drains. They're places that are full of nature and full of life. But I would say that, of course, living near the River Humber, of how important they are. But communities see the problems our rivers face every day from reduced water quality, declining biodiversity, and rivers that are no longer the thriving ecosystems that they should be. They're under pressure from multiple sources, as have been mentioned, including business activity, agriculture, wastewater treatment, urban development, recreation, transport, and the growing impacts, of course, of climate change, which is quite rightly being mentioned here. These combined pressures have contributed directly to declining water quality and the loss of freshwater biodiversity across many catchments. This is why we are committed to delivering the most ambitious programme of water reform in decades, strengthening regulation, which will definitely be done. Can I just assure the honourable gentleman opposite, definitely he will see the transition plan this year, and earlier this year, I could even say that. Improving oversight of the water system, ensuring action across every source of pollution. And this is set out in the white paper that was published earlier this month. And amongst key measures, as have been measured, we're establishing a single empowered regulator for the entire water industry, backed by a chief engineer. It's astounding that the water industry didn't have a chief engineer before, but it has one now, to drive long-term planning, improve performance, and importantly, prevent problems before they occur. We've committed to delivering an enhanced, better joined-up regional water planning function to help identify lower cost and high-impact solutions to improve water quality and supply, considering opportunities across the sectors. And this, as my honourable friend for Brent West was talking about, I thought was really interesting, about the catchment measures, looking at the entire river basin, looking at how they're interconnected. And that's exactly my vision for what I want to see with this regional water planning function, is that they have a look at all of the different impacts that you're having in that water body. And I couldn't agree more on the nature-based solutions and how important they are and what they can deliver. Now, we've already had a change around in the way that we do this in terms of addressing flooding through changing the flood funding formula, and I'd really like to see us sort of embrace that. But we have to be honest and say that if we're embracing nature-based solutions, we do embrace an element of risk. You don't have the same certainty that you have if you add chemicals to something, you can predict a certain outcome. Nature isn't like that, but nature is powerful, and I want to see it used more, and used more as a way of sort of helping and supporting our nature. It's really interesting as well, listening to so many of you talking about the way rivers have been engineered, and I went to go visit a beautiful chalk stream not too far from where I live to see how they've done that, and we were talking about they were straightened, and of course this is our industrial heritage. Many were straightened because they were powering the mills that ground their corn, and that's why they wanted to create these straight channels, and as well as for navigation. So I love the word re-wiggling as well, can I say, to the Honourable Lady from Tiverton in my head. It's a great word. But looking at where we can re-wiggle them. And the Honourable Lady for North Herefordshire, again, she's right in saying, you know, they can hold more water when they're re-wiggled. You know, they can literally, you know, create more space and protect more communities. And on particularly that point, I'd just like to express my thanks for all of the emergency services and for everybody that's been involved in the response to Storm Chandra. And of course, my sympathy and support goes out to everyone who's been impacted it. The very latest update I've had through, so this is from the team, is that the overall flood risk remains at what they consider as a medium, which means rivers impact is probable in parts of southwest England today. So I really hope that that is going to be not resulting in properties being flooded, but I accept that it's had a huge impact upon the farming community. And my honourable friend for Bournemouth, he always makes me smile. And I love the fact he's constantly championing his constituency, and he wants to sort of protect and look after the people there who faced such awful flooding. And I think he's quite right to call out poor behaviour wherever he sees it. And I liked hearing about all of the different schools, and I love an eco-council group. They're just fantastic. If ever you feel slightly jaded by politics, which of course would never ever happen, but if you ever feel slightly jaded by politics, go and spend some time with primary children and you come away just feeling so uplifted because they're so passionate and they care so greatly. So good on all of them, and pass on my congratulations, and I hope that they continue to challenge us as we take all of our work forward. But we're also, as we've mentioned, accelerating nature-based solutions, looking at where we can restore wetlands, reconnecting floodplains, improving river corridors. That came up a lot, and it's quite right. How do we make those river corridors to create healthier, more resilient catchments? Alongside this, reforming regulatory powers, cracking down on poor performance, improving transparency, and ensuring that the polluter pays. For the first time, our river systems will be managed in a fully integrated way, ensuring every sector, including agriculture, plays its part in restoring the health of our waterways. And I should as well welcome the honourable gentleman to his place as well. And this builds on some of the work we've done through the Water Special Measures Act. Our revised Environmental Improvement Plan has been mentioned already, and that has ambitious Environment Act biodiversity targets, including to restore or create more than 500,000 hectares of wildlife-rich habitat outside protected sites by 2042. And creating and restoring river habitats and wetlands will be vital to achieving this. Now, I really enjoyed the Making Space for Water launch. I thought it was a fantastic event, and there was so much sort of, I think, willingness to collaborate and passion in that room. And the Making Space for Water calls for incentives for land managers to help create nature-friendly river corridors. So through the ELM scheme, as mentioned by my honourable friend, and on some of the more specific details, I will sort of get a response from my honourable friend, the Minister for Farming, for him. But through those schemes, we include specific actions in the Sustainable Farming Initiative, which pays farmers for establishing and managing buffer strips beside watercourse. And we also agree with the Making Space for Water that it's important to reconnect rivers to floodplains, restoring natural processes, enhancing biodiversity. So there's 2 pilot rounds, which we're looking at the moment in the Landscape Recovery Scheme, and we've provided 56 projects with development grants to support farmers, landowners rivers and environmental organisations in developing strategies for long-term nature recovery. These projects are collectively aiming to restore 600 kilometres of rivers, helping reconnect rivers to their floodplains. Now, I know the Honourable Lady speaks with passion and knowledge, the Honourable Lady for North Herefordshire, about agriculture pollution, and she's quite right. One of the most significant contributors to pollution in our rivers is that which is derived from agriculture pollution, which is affecting over 40% of our water bodies. So this pollution, including nitrogen, nutrients and soil runoff or sediment, has a profound impact on the health of freshwater environments and the biodiversity that depends on them. So under the Environment Act, we've set a clear long-term target to reduce nitrogen, phosphorus and sediment from agriculture entering the water environment by 40% by 2038. And there's various means in which we want to achieve this. So through the commitment in the White Paper to simplify and improve the regulatory framework for agriculture, developing that single, robust, English-wide regulation and, where necessary, strengthening standards. Doubling funding for the Environment Agency's Farm Inspection Enforcement Team, enabling at least 6,000 inspections a year by 2029. And strengthening local advice through our catchment-sensitive farming, as well as through the new £30 million Farmer Collaboration Fund, which she announced earlier this month at the Oxford Farming Conference. And just this week, in fact, just yesterday, I'm losing track of which day is which, but definitely this week, I held a round table with farming representatives, so not just the NFU, but there were farmers there, people from different farming sectors, alongside all environmental organisations and water company representatives to talk about this problem around agriculture pollution. And the reason I wanted everyone in the same room is I wanted not just everyone to hear the message I was giving, but also everybody to hear from everybody else as well. So the water companies could hear from the environmentalists, could hear from the farmers could hear from the environmentalists could hear from the farmers, so everyone could gain an understanding of each other's points of view and how we're going to work on doing this together. So during that meeting, I announced that we've launched the consultation for reform of how sewage sludge is regulated in agriculture. So that's gone live this week, that consultation document, which is looking at the option to move it into environmental permitting regime, which was recommended by the Independent Water Commission. And that group, that group of different people have been working together on this, on the issue around agriculture pollution, because I think by bringing together different stakeholders, and there was much consensus and much willingness to sort of tackle this, and I think it's far better that we try and do something collectively by farmers, I say, and environmentalists and water companies working together. I think is the best way to tackle this, and that work continues. Of looking up, of course, yes.
Update that she's giving us, and I agree with her that working together is really important. I've written to the Minister to request a meeting between her and myself and other cross-party MPs in the Y catchment from Labour, Conservative and Lib Dem in that spirit of working together. Will she commit today to have that meeting soon?
I thank the lady, and I've seen her letter, and I'm having a look at. I'm basically having a look. I probably shouldn't. I'll get told off by officials for saying this. I'm basically looking at whether I can come back to the Y and maybe do something there with everybody. But if not, we can do something in Parliament. But I would quite like, because I went to the Y last year when we announced our £1 million research fund into sort of what's happening in the Y. It'd be quite nice to sort of go back and see what's been happening. So yes, it's on my radar. Can I say to the Honourable Lady, and I'll get her a proper answer in writing back for when we want to do it. So as the Making Space for Water highlights, it's crucial to connect river habitats at the catchment scale, and I'd like to emphasise the importance of catchment partnerships to improving water quality and restoring natural processes. These partnerships are well established and effective in coordinating local collaboration and delivering projects with multiple benefits. And this includes the Dorset Catchment Partnership, which is leading work on the Riverway and the wider Dorset rivers to improve water quality, reduce runoff and restore natural flows. And this is why earlier this month we announced we are investing £29 million from water company fines into local projects which clean up our environment, which include doubling our funding for catchment partnerships, providing them with an extra £1.7 million per year over the next 2 years. Because as my friend, the Honourable Member for North East Herefordshire, it is absolutely essential that we support and we pay tribute to the growing number of grassroots organisations and the work that they do to protect our natural environment. So doubling funding for catchment partnerships should help them to continue to do just that. And this is part of the government's commitment to giving communities greater influence over water environment planning and decision making, because fundamentally they're the people who know their water area the best. So through our increased funding, we expect to support over 100 projects which will improve 450 kilometres of rivers, restore 650 acres of natural habitats and plant 100,000 new trees. The additional funding is expected to track to at least a further £11 million from private sector investment, making even greater benefit for local communities like those in all of the honourable friends and gentlemen and ladies constituencies. And chalk streams, another one of my favourites. Restoring chalk streams is a core ambition of our water reforms. We are home to 85% of the world's chalk streams, and as the Honourable Lady, the spokesperson for the Liberal Democrats, said, we are one of the only places that has so many of them, and they're home to one of our rarest and keystone species, such as the Atlantic salmon. And as the Making Space for Water campaign rightly highlights, protecting keystone species is key to healthy rivers and streams. There's so much more I can say, but I'm very conscious I've now been talking for 14 minutes. So I will move on. Go on then, yes.
I thank the Minister for giving way, and I'm afraid she slightly walked into this. I previously raised in this chamber an invitation for her to come down and visit Revival in my constituency, a campaign to restore the Ivell chalk stream. They've got a particular project, a pilot project, looking at doing that chalk stream first approach that would potentially restore the aquifer and not just help the Ivell, but actually we could see chalk streams that have completely ceased to flow at all return. So it'd be really exciting to talk to her about that, and also some of the challenges they're experiencing with the DEFRA Water Restoration Fund. So just put that back on her agenda.
I did walk into that, didn't I? I thank my honourable friend, and I will. If he wants to send me through, I will, of course, take a serious look at it. I'm very keen to be getting out and about when it's a bit less wet, Madam Chair. But I should say rain should be what I'm used to. So, to conclude, restoring the health of our rivers is fundamental to safeguarding nature, supporting resilient communities and securing our water environment for generations to come. This Labour government is committed to delivering the most comprehensive programme of reform ever undertaken. Strengthening regulation, boosting enforcement, investing in innovation, supporting local partnerships and empowering farmers, land managers and water companies to play their part. From national action on agricultural pollution and chalk stream protections to ambitious local projects in South Dorset, we are driving real long-term improvements. Together, these measures demonstrate our unwavering commitment to cleaner water, thriving habitats and a healthier natural environment across England.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Butler. I'd just like to thank all members and right honourable members for their thoughtful and constructive contributions in today's debate, particularly the honourable member for North Herefordshire for outlining eloquently the really quite damaging and concerning impact of agricultural runoff. This is an issue which does not get the spotlight that it needs. I'd like to thank my honourable friend for Bournemouth East, who sadly can't be with us at the moment, for highlighting the urgent need of passing on healthier rivers and cleaner water to the next generation than that which we have inherited, and also for calling time on some of the severe shortcomings of Wessex Water. I'd like to thank my honourable friend, the member for Brent North, for emphasising the need to protect our riverways with that essential collaboration between government, regulatory bodies, farmers, landowners and environmentalists. Also, I would like to really welcome the contributions of my honourable friend, the member for North East Hertfordshire, for making a doughty and strong argument in defence of our unique chalk streams. This is our unique environmental inheritance in this country. We must make sure that we protect it. I'd like to thank the Liberal Democrat spokesperson, the honourable member for Tiverton and Minehead, for vividly illustrating the sorry track record of so many of the big water companies, including South West Water. Perhaps, rather interestingly, I enjoyed some of the political gymnastics on display from the Shadow Minister today. It was some light relief on a Thursday afternoon. But in all seriousness, I think it's really important that we work on a cross-party basis to realise that the culture around banning bonuses, not pay bonuses, for water bosses got totally out of control over a number of years. This government have made some important steps forward in tackling that, but there is definitely work to do to be more effective, and I hope there is cross-party support for that. Finally, I'd like to thank the Minister for Water for her comments. There was plenty there to welcome, reaffirming the government's commitment to engaging with the Making Space for Water campaign, a pledge to continue that work with farmers and landowners to have that truly joined-up approach to tackling agricultural runoff, a welcome to commitment to making sure that polluters always pay for the projects that go so far in cleaning up our rivers and streams. And finally, I was equally happy to hear a defence of our chalk streams and their revival. Success here is surely critical to restoring nature and boosting biodiversity in our chalk streams across the country. Thank you.
Thank you. The question is that this House has considered the matter of protecting and restoring river habitats. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. Order, order, the sitting stands adjourned.